In her final months, Marilyn Monroe made a choice that mirrored the most haunting moment of her childhood, and it may have sealed her fate. But to understand why, you have to know the story we began in Part 1. In Part 1, we examined Marilyn Monroe's life to find how inattention, hyperfocus, and impulsivity shaped both her triumphs and her struggles. We saw Norma Jeane's unstable childhood, her obsessive self-reinvention, and how acting became both her escape and her emotional release. If you haven't seen that video yet, there's a link nearby that will take you straight to it. Actors often use what's called the method to make their emotions on screen feel real. Sometimes that means closing their eyes and imagining a memory. Sometimes it means living as the character.
I drink your milkshake.
Hurting how they hurt.
You're tearing me apart!
Just to make a single scene
You say one thing, he says another, and everybody changes back again!
believable. For Marilyn Monroe, however, the method wasn't something she could switch on and off. Unlike many actors who used it, she didn't have a steady core identity to slip back into when the camera stopped rolling. She had gone to great lengths to erase Norma Jeane, changing her name, bleaching her hair, even making subtle changes to her nose and mouth. Anything to distance herself from the painful memories from her childhood that haunted her. But trauma doesn't vanish just because you bury it. And research shows that deep early trauma can actually rewire the brain. The amygdala, the alarm bell, starts firing too hot and too often, while the prefrontal cortex, the parts that's supposed to slam on the brakes, actually weakens over time. For Marilyn, the result was emotional dysregulation. A mind that treated every setback like a crisis, with no reliable way to return to calm. You could see the effects everywhere she worked. On The Misfits, Marilyn's character breaks down crying in front of a corral of wild mustangs. On paper, it was meant to be one cathartic burst, then a reset for the next take. But once Marilyn tapped into that pain, she couldn't shut it off. And between takes, she sobbed uncontrollably, shaking so hard the cameras had to stop rolling while the crew waited for hours for her to steady. On The Prince and the Showgirl, director Laurence Olivier wanted precision, sharp blocking, tight timing, no surprises. Marilyn brought something messier. Real tears from real memories and real grief. Once she went there, she didn't always come back quickly. Olivier complained that she would disappear in the middle of scenes, and filming froze while someone coaxed her back to baseline. That someone was almost always Paula Strasberg, her on-set coach and emotional lifeline. Paula whispered cues, eased her into takes, and pulled her back when the emotion swallowed her whole. Directors resented it. They called Paula a distraction, even a parasite. But Marilyn needed her there because without Paula, she couldn't leave the ground at all. Photographer Milton Green described working with Marilyn as catching lightning in a bottle. But he also saw how fast her moods flipped, laughing uncontrollably one minute, crying uncontrollably the next. There was no middle ground, and everyone around her had to adapt. And then there were the pills. Hollywood in the 50s handed out barbiturates and amphetamines like aspirin, and Marilyn relied on them for everything. To sleep, to wake up, to push through the day. On The Misfits, co-star Eli Wallach remembered her showing up in a fog, eyes glassy and voice thick, only to swing into anxious, jittery bursts a few hours later. During the filming of Let's Make Love, actress Simone Signoret described the same whiplash. One moment Marilyn seemed sedated and unreachable. The next, she was wired, twitchy, and restless. Directors and crews never knew which version of Marilyn would step on set, and they had to react to each one. Her emotional swings made Hollywood cautious. Studios began to hedge, choosing safer bets for major roles. Truman Capote had written Breakfast at Tiffany's with Marilyn in mind and actually championed her for the part of Holly Golightly. But studio executives wary of her on-set unpredictability, refused to take the risk and cast Audrey Hepburn instead. The loss of that role shifted the way Capote treated her too. Their closeness cooled and his attention drifted toward praising Audrey. By the early 60s, the ripple effects of her dysregulation caught up with her on the set of Something's Got to Give. She arrived late, missed days entirely, and the production ground to a halt as crews and co-stars waited. Eventually, 20th Century Fox fired her, in one of the most public dismissals of a major star in Hollywood history. It's hard to imagine that a woman as smart, beautiful, and famous as Marilyn Monroe could feel insecure about anything. And yet, insecurity haunted her almost every day of her life. In people with ADHD, the brain's antenna for ridicule and rejection is so fine-tuned that a single insult can leave them absolutely gutted. Words hit like kicks and punches, and small slights feel enormous. A single insult could leave Marilyn despondent. Most people would wince, maybe stew for a day, then shake it off. But for Marilyn, the pain lingered like an open wound. On The Prince and the Showgirl, director Laurence Olivier berated and belittled her throughout filming, once snapping in front of the crew, "All she has to do is be sexy." He later called her unprofessional to her face. Marilyn told Paula Strasberg that she felt humiliated and stupid, like she shouldn't be there. A friend pulling away could undo her for weeks. Truman Capote once said, "Marilyn was the perfect Holly Golightly. She was the dream." Losing Holly Golightly wasn't just another casting change. She told friends that she felt discarded like an old coat. Marilyn's wounds only deepened when she found Arthur Miller's journal entry, "I think I made a terrible mistake." She read it as proof that even the man who promised to see the real her didn't want her anymore. She had to finish The Misfits with that line echoing in her head. Miller's script forced her to perform a version of herself that was fragile and broken every day, in front of a camera and crew. And when the film wrapped in November of 1960, she was already emotionally exhausted. 2 months later, the marriage ended, and weeks after that, she checked herself into the Payne Whitney Psychiatric Clinic, believing that she was signing up for peace and healing. What she found instead were locked doors, stripped clothes, and humiliation. Most people who check into a clinic expect comfort and therapy. Marilyn found herself trapped. The hospital didn't allow her to leave. The more she begged to be released, the more the staff treated her pleas as proof that she really did belong there. It was a logic trap, like the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland, who said, "Of course you're mad, or you wouldn't be here." It took Joe DiMaggio storming into the hospital to finally set her free. He told them, "If you don't let her out, I'll take this place apart brick by brick." Only then did they open the doors. The experience hollowed her. She walked out of Payne Whitney, but she never stopped living with it. Her trust in help was gone. Her anxiety deepened, the pills multiplied, to wake up, to sleep, to quiet her head for a few hours. A year later, when she finally got hired for Something's Got to Give, she showed up physically present but emotionally spent. Glassy-eyed from sedatives one day, jittery from stimulants the next. And in the middle of that chaos, she made another choice that worked against her. On May 19th of 1962, she slipped away from production, calling in sick, to fly to New York in order to sing Happy Birthday, Mr. President, to John F. Kennedy at Madison Square Garden. The dress, the breathy performance, the headlines, it was iconic, but it was also reckless. JFK ultimately distanced himself from her afterwards. Now, someone else might have been embarrassed, even hurt, but most likely they'd find a way to shrug it off. But for Marilyn, that silence landed like a door slamming. By then, Fox was already at its breaking point. The studio was hemorrhaging money on Cleopatra, a production so bloated it was threatening to sink the company. and the top brass wasn't in the mood to indulge a star who was missing days and creating headlines for the wrong reasons. When Fox fired her, and then sued her for $500,000, Marilyn experienced it as the biggest, loudest rejection of her life, splashed across headlines for the world to see. On the night of August 4th, she was at her Brentwood home. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, stayed the night. Her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, came by in the evening, and Peter Lawford, JFK's brother-in-law, called her. He later said that she sounded slurred and lost, and that she told him, "Say goodbye to the president, and say goodbye to yourself because you're a nice guy." Those are the last words anyone ever heard Marilyn Monroe say. In the early hours of August 5th, Eunice Murray noticed Marilyn's bedroom light was on. The door was locked, and she called Dr. Greenson, who broke in through a window and found her. Marilyn Monroe, at the age of 36, was gone. She was buried on Wednesday, August 8, 1962 at Pierce Brothers Westwood Cemetery. The outpouring of grief was immense. Lee Strasberg, the mentor who once distanced himself from her in those final years, actually delivered her eulogy. And Joe DiMaggio, her ex-husband married to her for only 9 months, arranged for a dozen roses to be placed by her grave 3 times a week until the day he died. Whether or not Marilyn had ADHD is obviously a matter of conjecture. We can only guess from the facts we're given. But the circumstances of her life, the choices she made, and the identity she created point to a woman deeply shaped by the extremes of her upbringing. No one secure in their identity abandons it to invent an artificial one, unless perhaps they hate who they are. The tragedy of Marilyn Monroe is that she rejected every man who fell in love with Norma Jeane. Perhaps she believed Norma Jeane was unworthy of love. Perhaps never feeling loved in her formative years left her unable to accept it. Yet it was Norma Jeane who inspired one of the greatest writers in American history to put pen to paper, and inspired an ex-husband to send roses to her grave for over 20 years. Sadly, it's Norma Jeane who rests here at Pierce Brothers Westwood Cemetery. The marker may say Marilyn Monroe, but you can't bury a legend that never dies. Thank you so much for watching. If you've liked what you've seen, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'm curious, which of Marilyn Monroe's movies are you most fond of? Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, stay focused.